911, what's your emergency? I killed someone. I killed Dr. Harris. Sir, I need you to stay calm. Can you tell me why you did this? It's because of my daughter, Emily. She's dead. And it's all because of him. I'm so sorry to hear that, sir. Can you tell me what happened? My daughter, Emily. She was only 25 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She went in for a routine brain surgery. The doctor said it was a simple procedure, that she'd be fine. But something went horribly wrong. What happened, sir? The surgeon, Dr. Harris, he made a mistake. He drilled a hole in her head to perform the operation. He didn't control the dosage of the anesthetic properly and used too much. Emily's condition became critical, and it took a lot of effort to stabilize her. Sir, I need you to stay calm. What happened after the surgery? After the surgery, Emily was never the same. Emily's brain, lungs, and stomach were filled with tubes. She could only lie in bed every day. She experienced over 10 seizures daily and endured immense pain. She completely lost the ability to live a normal life. The medication they gave her barely helped. She became depressed and lost her will to live. Our family was torn apart. My wife and I had to take turns watching her around the clock. I'm so sorry to hear that, sir. This must have been incredibly difficult for you and your family. They knew she was at high risk for severe complications, so they arranged for her to be transferred to another hospital to avoid further responsibility. Just a few days after being transferred, Emily developed severe complications. She suffered from uncontrollable seizures, swelling in her brain, and eventually organ failure. The new hospital tried their best, but it was too late. I can only imagine how difficult that must have been for you and your family. I started investigating, talking to the nurses, the other staff. I uncovered the truth. Dr. Harris wasn't ready to perform that surgery alone, but he insisted on doing it anyway. He wasn't even experienced enough to be the lead surgeon, and the hospital, they tried to cover it up. They lied about what happened. After the surgery, we received a report from another hospital where we had taken Emily for a second opinion. The report showed that the cyst in her brain was benign and didn't require surgery. Regular checkups would have sufficed, but Dr. Harris had insisted it was malignant and needed immediate surgery, saying she would die soon without it. We were scared and felt we had no choice but to agree. He used fear-mongering tactics to get us to sign the consent forms for the surgery. I see. What happened to Dr. Harris? I called his office, putting on my best desperate patient act. He totally bought it and set up an after-hours appointment. When I arrived, it was just me and Dr. Harris in the empty office. I had a knife stashed in my coat. I started telling him about Emily, how that we had turned our lives into a tragic mess. He tried to apologize. Classic, right? But sorry wasn't going to cut it this time. So I tied him to a chair, making sure he got the VIP treatment. I made sure he felt the same fear and helplessness Emily must have felt. I made sure he understood exactly why he wouldn't be leaving that office alive. I'm so sorry for your loss, sir. But please stay on the line. Help is almost there. It's too late for help. It's too late for Emily. But at least now, Dr. Harris can't hurt anyone else. When the police arrived at the scene, they were met with a chilling sight. Dr. Harris's office was in disarray, with papers and medical instruments scattered across the desk and floor. Dr. Harris was found tied to a chair, clearly lifeless. His face was frozen in an expression of fear and pain. Emily had been a bright and vibrant young woman with a promising future. She had recently graduated from university with honors and had just started her dream job. Her sudden decline after the surgery had plunged the family into a constant state of distress and despair. The parents had exhausted their savings and emotional reserves trying to care for her, watching helplessly as she suffered daily seizures and unrelenting pain. Emily's mother had quit her job to become her full-time caregiver, and her father had taken extra shifts to cover the mounting medical bills. They had sold their home and moved into a small apartment to afford the specialized care Emily needed. Despite their best efforts, Emily's condition continued to deteriorate, and the family was trapped in a relentless cycle of hospital visits and emergency interventions. The father had spent countless hours researching Emily's condition and seeking justice for what he believed was a preventable tragedy. The father's actions, driven by grief and a desperate need for justice, had crossed a line. Taking the law into his own hands and committing murder was not the answer. This turn of events served as a stark reminder that seeking justice through violence only perpetuates the cycle of pain and suffering. "911, what's your emergency?" "It's my father. He's dead. I found him in the sauna at our apartment building. He's been steamed to death. The scene is horrific, with his mouth agape as if he was screaming, his body twisted in a desperate attempt to escape, his hands clawing at the door." "Sir, please try to stay calm. What's your name and address?" "John Smith, 123 Oak Street, apartment 5B. "Okay, John. I'm dispatching emergency services right away. Can you tell me more about what happened?" "My father told me he was going to the sauna last night. This morning, I saw him through the glass door. It's unbearable." "Was it locked?" "Yes. It's one of those electronic locks, and it was dead. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The sauna was blazing hot. The temperature gauge was way off." "When was the last time you spoke to your father?" "Last night, around 8 p.m. He was heading to the sauna. He used it all the time. It looked like an oven in there." "Did your father mention any issues with the sauna equipment recently?" "No. He loved that sauna. Never had any problems." "Help is on the way, John. Please, stay on the scene." John called 911 to report that his father had been found dead in the sauna at their apartment building, having been steamed to death. The police quickly arrived at the scene and began their investigation. The electronic lock on the sauna was dead. The temperature gauge showed that the sauna was extremely hot. John had tried to open the door, but was unsuccessful. When asked about recent conflicts his father might have had, John mentioned that his father had spoken about a woman named Sasha several times. John elaborated that his father was not just interested in Sasha, but had harassed her, making inappropriate comments about her appearance, cornering her in the elevator or hallway with disgusting propositions. The initial investigation pointed towards Sasha's boyfriend, Mark, as a prime suspect. Mark was the apartment building's maintenance manager, including responsibility for the sauna equipment. He had a strong motive, as he was known to be jealous. Witnesses reported seeing him near the sauna area on the night of the incident, and he had no solid alibi for the time of the murder. As the investigation unfolded, more details about Mark came to light. He had a history of violent behavior, and had been in trouble with the law before. Neighbors had overheard heated arguments between Mark and John's father, where Mark accused him of trying to steal Sasha away. Upon reviewing security footage, the detectives initially believed they had caught Mark tampering with the electrical panel near the sauna. The footage showed a figure dressed similarly to Mark, wearing a hat, which Mark often wore while working. However, upon closer inspection, the detectives noticed a peculiar detail. They observed that the figure, while dressed similarly, had a different gait and mannerisms compared to Mark. Further investigation revealed that John and Mark were of similar height and build. John had cleverly disguised himself to look like Mark, wearing similar clothes and a hat to mislead the investigation. The detectives discovered that the circuit breaker for the sauna's lock and emergency release had been tampered with and flipped off. This crucial piece of evidence, combined with financial records showing large, unexplained withdrawals from his father's accounts, and text messages revealing John's growing frustration and resentment, painted a clear picture of premeditation. John had a strained relationship with his father. Witnesses described frequent arguments between them, often about money and control over family matters. John's father, a wealthy but domineering man, had recently threatened to cut John out of his will due to John's irresponsible behavior and mounting debts. Desperate, and seeing his inheritance slipping away, John meticulously planned the incident. He knew his father's routine and took advantage of it. The security footage showed John entering the sauna area under the guise of checking on maintenance issues. To divert suspicion from himself, John carefully planted evidence to frame Mark. He knew about the tension between Mark and his father and used it to his advantage, leaving traces that would point towards Mark, such as fingerprints on the electrical panel and subtle clues in the vicinity of the sauna. Now fully aware of the gravity of his actions, John awaited the judgment of the legal system.
911, what's your emergency? I think I've killed someone. He broke into my house. Okay, ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Are you safe right now? Yes, I'm locked in my bedroom. He's not moving anymore. Alright, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. From the beginning if you can. It was just a normal night. I was watching a movie, trying to unwind after a long week. I remember it was around midnight because the clock chimed just as I was getting into the movie. Then I heard this faint scratching at the door, like someone was using something metal to fiddle with the lock. Did you see anyone when you heard the noise? No, I was too scared to move at first. I just muted the movie and listened. The door slowly creaked open and I saw a shadow move inside. It was a man. My heart was pounding. I couldn't think straight. I just knew I had to hide. Where did you go? I crawled behind the couch in the living room. It's silly, but my first thought was just hide from sight. From behind the couch, I could see his shoes moving around. He was quiet, almost professional. I remember seeing dirt on his boots, like he'd been outside for a while. What happened after that? He started searching the house. I could hear drawers opening, things being moved around. My mind was racing, thinking about what I could do. I remember my phone was still on the coffee table, just inches away from where I was hiding. I waited till his footsteps moved towards the kitchen. Then I grabbed my phone and crawled into the hallway closet. Was that when he found you? Yes, but it took him a while. I heard him coming closer, and I was holding my breath, trying not to make a sound. He opened the closet door, and that's when he grabbed me. He covered my mouth, but I managed to bite his ear. He screamed, and that's when... It's okay, take your time. He got angry and threw me to the ground. Then he took off his shirt, and I realized he was planning to do something terrible to me. Fortunately, he wasn't very strong, and I had more strength than him. In desperation, I saw his shirt on the floor and picked it up. I stood up while he was still on the ground, and I wrapped the shirt around his neck. I pulled with everything I had, using my weight to gain leverage. It was him on me, and then he just stopped moving. You did what you had to protect yourself. We have officers on the way. Can you tell me if you knew this man? No. I've never seen him before. You're doing great, and help is on the way. Just stay on the line and I'll keep talking to you. You're safe now. The police arrived minutes later, securing the scene and confirming the intruder had expired. Through their investigation, it was revealed that the man was sent by someone named Marco, a disgruntled former co-worker who had once pursued the woman romantically. but was repeatedly and politely rejected by her. Over time, Marco's behaviour became increasingly inappropriate. For instance, on one occasion, he publicly presented her with flowers in the office and declared his feelings loudly in front of their colleagues, making her extremely uncomfortable. Another time, he followed her to her car after work, insisting on driving her home despite her clear refusals. These incidents led her to finally confront him at a company party. In front of many colleagues, she called him out for his relentless pursuit, saying things like, "Marco, can't you take a hint? No means no. Stop acting like a desperate creep." She went further, attacking his character by saying, "Everyone here knows you're a pathetic loser who can't handle rejection. Grow up and get a life." This public rejection deeply wounded Marco's pride and dignity, causing him to harbour a deep-seated grudge. The police assured her that Marco would be apprehended and brought to justice for orchestrating this attack. She took steps to enhance her home security, installing a new alarm system and reinforcing her doors and windows.
I've had a few scary encounters in my life. Not sure if that means that I'm old or just a creep magnet, but this one still creeps me out. In the early 80s, when I was 8, my family was visiting my uncle who lived in backwoods Missouri. He lived on a lot of land, and the only other people who really even lived on the street were relatives, so no one else just ever happened to be out there. This meant no one ever locked their doors because random family members were always coming by for this or that. One night while we were there, my parents and aunt and uncle decided to go to a nearby town to go bowling because bowling. My brothers, who were 11 and 12, my female cousins, 6 and 14, and I'm female, stayed home. It was still daylight when the adults left, but it started raining pretty hard and got dark quickly. We used to play this game that was essentially hide and seek in the dark house, but we cleverly called it Vampire. There was a thin, little mattress on the living room floor that some of the kids would sleep on at night, so the person who was it would lie on the mattress and fold it over themselves like a coffin and count down to midnight. When they got to midnight, they went looking for you. Again, all of the lights are off, and you tried to make it back to the coffin before you got caught. Because the house was in the country, it was pitch black at night. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. What this meant for the game was that, 1, you couldn't tell where the vampire was looking, so you just had to make a break for it, and 2, if you were extremely lazy, and I'm sure by now you can guess which one of us met those standards, you could hide in the living room with a coffin and get to base quickly. Ben, my 11-year-old brother, was it and was doing the normal countdown. I was hiding maybe 6 feet from him. As he's counting, there's a flash of lightning. I don't know if I was already looking at the living room window or if the lightning made me look, but with the backlight of the lightning, I see a man with his face against the window. He had his hands on each side of his face as if he's trying to peer in and looks exactly like the stereotypical creepster, heavyset, scraggly beard, etc. I could feel every hair on my body standing on end. Immediately, I began trying to convince myself that I didn't see what I saw, but then Ben sternly whispered, "If anyone is hiding in here, stay still." I sort of croaked out an "I'm here" right as there was another flash of lightning. Creepster was still there, but no longer trying to look in the window. Instead, he was now looking toward the front door. Ben and I immediately knew what was coming next. From where he was standing, Creepster was probably only 5 feet from the front door. Ben was the same distance, but there was a couch between him and the door. Ben leapt over the couch and locked the door right as Creepster started trying the handle. At this point, I guess Ben decided that it was best to let Creepster know that people were home and that we knew he was there because he flipped on the porch light and then started turning on the lights in the house. This is going to sound weird, but I was too terrified to panic. Having said that, I was relying completely on Ben to know and tell me what to do. He told me to go lock the other doors and was yelling for everyone else to come out and to lock all of the windows. Honestly, the next few minutes are hazy in my mind. I remember everything up until this point extremely clearly. Then I remember the end very clearly, but I'm less clear about the middle. I know that I locked the side door and then the sliding glass door on the back of the house. When we've talked about it over the years, some people remember us seeing him out the back door as well. I don't think I remember that. What I clearly recall is locking the sliding glass door and standing there frozen and hearing Ben in a very calm but firm voice say, "Close the curtain. Listen to me, okay? Close the curtain." So I did. Ben can't remember that part, and I just remember my fear and Ben's voice, so I'm not sure if I saw Creepster in the backyard or not. We tried to call the police, but my aunt and uncle had a stupid party line and it wouldn't work, whether from the storm or from a neighbor leaving it off the hook or whatever. For the record, they are the only people I've ever known with a party line, so this wasn't normal to me either. But for those of you who don't know what that is, in really rural areas, multiple people on the street would actually share a phone line. It would have different rings for different households, but you could pick up the phone and listen to your neighbor's conversation. We also tried to summon help on my uncle's CB radio, but couldn't reach anyone. My uncle was a hunter, so he had a gun rack full of rifles in his room, but my older cousin was on an out-of-town hunting trip and took them with him. All we could find was a BB gun that looked like a real rifle. I vividly remember Ben putting me on phone duty and Scott, my older brother, on CB duty, while he stood watch at the little square window on the front door with the BB gun. Maybe 30 minutes later, Ben said, "He's back. He's coming up the driveway." The rest of us froze in fear, but Ben opened the front door and stepped out on the porch, pointed the gun, and said, "Get out of here right now." Then we hear our cousin Kyle, who lived down the road a bit, say, "You know that's a BB gun, right?" Even though Kyle was only 15, I remember that we felt like we had been saved when he showed up. Kyle seemed really skeptical of our story, like we were playing a trick on him, even though we had no idea that he was coming. But he stayed with us until our parents came home. Honestly, I don't remember if we even told our parents what happened when they got home. There was definitely no police involvement though. We just went on with our trip, but we never played Vampire again without some mention of that night. Edit. I just talked to Ben. First, he doesn't have an account, but is so pleased that everyone thinks he handled himself well. Second, he said the story was pretty spot on to how he remembers it, but that the guy at the back door, when we talked about it before, I thought he didn't remember that part, so I was confused on that. He said that as I was locking the side door, we saw Creepster moving around to the back of the house, so Ben told me to hurry and lock the sliding glass door. Those doors are right around the corner from each other, so I was closest. According to Ben, and this is what I thought happened, but I didn't want to say it unless I was positive. As soon as I flipped the lock on the back door, the guy was standing there, just looking in at me. I stood there for a couple of beats looking at him, and that's when Ben told me to close the curtain. We also saw him in the front yard one more time after that. I remembered this all along, but wanted to check with Ben to make sure he also remembered it before I added it in. It was a large front yard with a long gravel driveway. Off to one side of the driveway, quite a ways from the house, was a spot where my cousins parked cars they were working on. I know, so stereotypical. While we were on watch, we saw Creepster messing with one of the cars. It was actually Kyle's. When he couldn't get it started, he walked into the woods that ran beside the house. We didn't see him again after that.
Before I start, I feel like I should let something be very clear. I absolutely love Ellen. We've been living together for about 3 years now, but have known each other our whole lives. In fact, we were childhood friends. And I know this may sound like a fairy tale to some people, but it truly felt like we were always destined to be together. Even after graduation, when we started dating other people, it only felt truly right when we were with each other. So I don't know what took me so long to ask her out, but I'm really glad I did. We have the same taste in music, movies, and even food. We laugh at the same dumb jokes and know exactly how to comfort each other in times of need. She's the kindest, most gentle, and loving girl I ever met. We even been talking about our plans for marriage and how we would like to have kids of our own. That's why it hurts so much how it all went terribly wrong in just 4 nights. I would also like to preface that Ellen doesn't have much of a family other than me, and some very distant aunts that she never met and doesn't even know their names. I was born in a big family with 4 siblings and plenty of cousins that were always visiting and even helping out when we got in trouble. Ellen has none of that. She doesn't have any siblings, and her father was an alcoholic, abusive freak that died when she was young. Her mother was a very kind and inspiring person that took care of the family by herself for many years and almost a second mother to myself. So when she passed away last year, it hurt us both for a long time. But Ellen stayed strong. She's not the type to let her feelings easily surface, so you gotta be a lot more perceptive to get what she truly feels. I used to pride myself in being capable of that. I felt like I knew her better than I knew myself. That's why this is all so strange and, frankly, terrifying. We were sleeping in bed and I was dreaming. I don't really remember what it was about, but for some reason I'm sure of it until I heard her voice very close to my ear. Knock, 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 knock. She was caressing my hair gently while sitting in bed and looking below at me. I slowly opened my eyes, groggy from sleep. Hey, what is it, baby? She kept looking at me, fixated, and repeated, knock, 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 knock. I glanced at the digital clock on top of the dresser, 3:27 a.m. I had work in only a few hours. What is it, Ellen? She paused. Please answer the joke, dear. Knock, 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 knock. Fine. I accepted, mostly because I was expecting some kind of surprise. Ellen wasn't the type to do what she was doing for no reason. Who's there? Her smile opened up and she answered, Not me, so don't answer the door. I kept looking at her, dumbfounded. What was that supposed to mean? Is that it? Is that the joke? Yes, she said, laying on the couch and covering herself with a blanket. Thank you for answering. Weirdo, I answered, closing my eyes and going back to sleep. Next morning, things went as usual. I only remembered the strange conversation while I was alone in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and wasn't sure if it had truly happened or if it was just a weird dream. So we had our breakfast together and she was acting normal, reading something aloud from a fashion magazine. Frankly, I wasn't paying much attention, so I took the opportunity to ask about last night. Initially, she didn't seem to know what I was talking about, then her eyes fixated on me and the same smile from last night crossed her face, briefly, and I knew it wasn't just a dream. She told me it wasn't anything of importance and stopped paying attention when I asked more inquisitively, and even though I shouldn't, I gave up. I had work and other matters to attend to and just brushed off the weird event thinking it wouldn't happen again. But the following night, I woke up to her voice. Knock, knock. A pause. Knock. What is it now? I said. Ellen, what are you doing? Knock, 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 she repeated. This time, she wasn't even touching me, just sitting in bed, looking at me with that same smile. But her eyes seemed larger and she blinked in longer intervals. I looked at the clock, once again, 3:27 a.m. Ellen, come on, what is it? I got work in a few hours. Can't have the luxury of waking up in the middle of the night to answer knock-knock jokes. Knock, knock, knock. This is getting creepy, you know. I'm not sure if this is some gag you've been doing, but I don't like it. Answer it. Knock, knock, knock. I sighed, but also let a small laugh escape. It was creepy, of course, but she was also my Ellen, so it didn't bother me as much as it should. Fine. Who is there? I answered in a playful tone. Not me. So don't answer the door. For some reason, I felt a chill down my spine. It was the same answer as before, and I still didn't get what it meant. But the way she said it, with a strange, monotone voice contrasted well with her smile and the fact that I had no idea what she meant by that. What does that mean? I asked. I really don't get it. She just smiled and went back to sleep. I felt a throb in my heart, but did the same. Next day, we talked again about what was happening. She was very evasive with my questions, and I barely got her to say anything. It was almost as if she couldn't talk about it, which was very strange considering we talk about pretty much everything. I told her I needed to be well rested for work, something she should understand well, and wasn't liking her little gag every night. She just nodded, and I decided to not press further as I didn't want to hurt her feelings and had work to attend to. When I got back home, we had dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed. Knock. Knock. I opened my eyes faster this time around. In fact, I barely got any sleep. I just knew she would do it again and kept thinking about it the whole time. Glanced at the clock. 3:27 a.m. Knock. Knock. I thought about ignoring her, just pretending I was asleep and she wouldn't wake me up, so I closed my eyes slowly, hoping that she hadn't seen me opening them in the first place and stayed quiet. Knock. Knock, she continued. She didn't stop. I regulated my breathing, but she kept going. Knock. Knock. I'm not answering your joke, Ellen. Stop it. Knock. Knock. I ignored, but she kept going. She had never been this insistent with anything before. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting on my nerves, and frankly, I felt scared. Why was Ellen doing this? Why every night at the same exact time down to the minute? Why wouldn't she let me sleep until I answered her? Knock. Knock. I got up in a sudden movement. God damn it, Ellen! I was ready for a discussion, but when I finally glanced at her, it was as if all the strength was drained from me. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't blinking. Just staring right at me, fixated like an animal, and her mouth was moving slowly, and she didn't stop. Knock. Knock. I didn't know how to react or what expression I had when I saw her, but my heart skipped a beat. It was terrifying, as if her gaze froze me in place. 1,000-yard stare. Knock. Knock. Who's there? I asked, feeling as if it was the only way out of that nightmare. Not me. So don't answer the door, she said weakly. Ellen slowly closed her eyes and laid down. I kept staring at her while she fell into what seemed to be a deep sleep. I got up and left. I walked downstairs and sat down at the couch in the living room, staring at the night sky outside and absorbing the quiet of the neighborhood. My heart was beating fast and it didn't slow down. I was too scared to sleep in the same room as my girlfriend, all because of a knock-knock joke. But it was unnatural. I thought about calling someone. I thought about it all being some kind of sleep-related issue, such as some type of sleepwalking, but it didn't make any sense. I felt so tired and decided that early in the morning I would call an old friend who's a psychologist and get the opinion of a professional. Something was wrong with Ellen. I stayed on the couch as the day rose, and once Ellen woke up, she was acting normal again. Even asked me why I wasn't in bed. I didn't answer. In fact, I didn't speak to her and simply left for work. She seemed very upset, but I wouldn't do anything about it. Once I got to work, I called my friend, told him everything that was happening in as much detail as I'm describing now. He didn't seem as worried as I figured, but we agreed in making an appointment for next week. Now I just needed to convince Ellen to come with me. I received plenty of text messages from her. She seemed very worried, sad, and even confused. She apologized a lot, and it broke my heart a little. I felt bad. I shouldn't have, but I answered her and made her promise it wouldn't happen again. I also told her about the appointment, and she seemed reluctant but agreed to go with me. So we made up. This was Ellen, after all. The girl I knew ever since I was 6 years old. The woman I loved and that had taken care of me for years. And as much as that strange behavior creeped me out, she wasn't doing anything particularly frightening or even dangerous, so for a brief while I convinced myself I should give her another chance. When I returned home from work, we stayed together. She even prepared my favorite meal. Ellen was acting as gentle and caring as I always remembered, and I slept with her in our bedroom, even though I was still a bit reluctant. Knock. I couldn't believe it. She promised me she wouldn't. Knock. I gazed at the clock. 3:27 a.m. Always. Knock. I was laying on my stomach and I couldn't see her face. In fact, I didn't even bother to look at her. I was feeling more sad than scared at that point. Sad that she had broken her word. Knock. Who's there? I answered, determined to just go back to sleep. Not me. So don't answer the door. I stayed quiet and closed my eyes. I just hoped I would be able to handle it until the appointment next week. To my surprise, I was actually able to sleep. Probably because I hadn't been able to rest since last night. The following morning, I went back to not saying anything to Ellen, only very limited responses. I was expecting her to act the same as yesterday, trying to apologize, but she didn't. Mostly, she didn't say anything, almost as if she had accepted it. She also looked tired, or at least a bit weak. I went to work, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. Didn't receive any messages either. Once I got back, we had the most silent dinner I ever had in my life, and she barely ate anything. I decided to let her have the bedroom and sleep on the couch. I wasn't sure if it would stop her, but held on to the hope that she wouldn't go downstairs only to tell me the same knock-knock joke again. I covered myself with a blanket, shaked off that uneasy feeling, and tried to sleep. I had a deep sleep, without dreams. Felt like I was lost in darkness. Then I heard breathing. Opened my eyes to see Ellen standing above me, looking at me with big, fixated eyes and dilated pupils that didn't seem to belong in such a completely neutral expression, watching me sleep. I almost screamed in terror, jumped out of the couch, and her eyes followed me as I stumbled through the dark room, creating distance between us. For a moment, I was able to glance at the clock above the table. 3:27 a.m. Ellen, what are you doing? I asked, desperate, but she didn't move. In fact, she didn't say anything. Just stared at me as if I was made of glass and she could see right through me. Then, I heard a knock on the front door. Instinctively, I looked in that direction. It was followed by another knock, and another, someone almost pounding at the door. I glanced back at Ellen and she was still staring at me. Slowly, I got closer to the door and she didn't move. The pounding continued. "Who's there?" I screamed. It stopped, and then I heard a voice. "John? John, can you hear me? Open the door, please! John, please open the door!" I froze in place. The voice kept calling me, but I couldn't believe it. It was Ellen's voice, coming from the other side of the door, but it couldn't be. "I beg you, John, open the door. It's serious. She's not me. I swear, she's not me." Slowly, I turned my head to look at Ellen, standing in front of the couch. She was looking at me, the same fixated eyes, and a terrible, wide grin across her face. The pounding continued. "John, open the door. Please, you have to trust me." I stayed still, not knowing what to do, and I don't remember what happened after that. I just woke up in my bedroom. The digital clock indicates it's 4:21 a.m. Ellen isn't by my side. I'm completely alone. I'm trembling uncontrollably, and I don't know what's going on. I don't remember what happened after I saw her terrible grin. I don't know if I opened the door. I tried to look for my phone, see if I could call the police or at least someone that I know, but I left it downstairs. All I have is Ellen's laptop, and it's where I'm writing this right now, to get advice, because I can't go downstairs. The corridor is dark, very dark, almost as if the shadows were leaning into the room, and I can hear a faint, scratching sound coming from below. What should I do?